On this video, I'm going to turn this overgrown mess behind me into this. A little over a year ago, we came through and cut down most of the trees in this spot in efforts to put in a garden. The garden was only a small section of this area, but we had to cut down quite a few more trees to be able to get enough sunlight to the garden. We cleaned up the trees that were in the area where they were going to plant the garden, but the ones that were outside of that perimeter we just left because they weren't in the way at the time. As you've seen, we built a new garden this year in a new location on our property. So now it's time to get this area cleaned up so that we can start to get it into pasture. So we've had the chickens over here in this old garden area for the last couple of weeks. I want to move them over to this area behind me so that this whole area can be open for pasture. This is mostly stuff that's just junk that needs to be burned. It's not really stuff that I can chip in the wood chipper or use for firewood or anything like that. And it's probably going to be the winter before we get around to burning. So I'm just going to try and push it further back in the woods so we can use this area right here for the chickens. I'm going to start by just cutting down a few of these saplings that are back in here. That way I can just push this pile back this way. Kind of like that saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you move a pile that your tractor can't push? One bite at a time. That'll do for what we need for this. It's a little wet, but not too wet to get it done. Just right on the edge. So I don't know how much we'll get done over here, but I'm gonna try and see what we can do. This area, we basically just dropped a bunch of trees and I was going to clean them up with the tractor, but the tractor was in the shop. And so I cut the tops off, we got them moved up here, piled, and I chipped the bulk of that, but there's still a little bit left to do there. But all the trunks, the logs, and then some of the bigger limbs are still here. I'm not going to try and cut out all this underbrush. Some of the bigger, woodier shoots that are coming off of stumps I'll cut out. But I'm going to leave the rest and see what the cows do, and the stuff that they leave behind, then I'll come back and cut it after they've gone through and taken a pass. But anything that they'll eat, I'm going to leave for them to eat. It's a little bit too wet here. This is the low area, and I was having a hard time backing up even just without anything on the grapple. And most of the rest of the stuff is small stuff I can just pick up by hand, and then I want to go through and cut out all the little sprouts that are coming up off of the stumps. I'm gonna try and sneak in here and grab some of these other logs. So it's a new day now. Last night we got the net set up over here and got the chickens moved over here this morning. Now I can get through this old garden area and work on getting the rest of this cleaned up. There's quite a few trees stacked right here that I dropped on top of each other, so I need to get those out of the way because I think this is going to be my best path to get up the hill. So this here's our last one in this stack. I'm gonna cut it in half because it's so long, and a couple of the other ones I stuck aside I'm gonna cut. I'm also gonna cut down a few of these small little trees here to get them out of the way and make more room for a pile, and then we'll just start piling it up. Majority of these logs here are trees that we cut down in this general area, although a few of them came from the new garden that we did this spring. This big pile is what I'm saving for firewood, but getting that cut up is a project for another day. For now, I'm just going to make a stack up here out of the way in an area that will be easy to get to in the future. The conventional approach of establishing this pasture would be to push down all the trees, add seed, straw, fertilizer, and water it until it gets established. We're taking a bit of an unconventional approach. We're doing the clearing and getting all the trees out of here, but then we're going to move the cows in and feed them hay out here right away. We're not going to put down any seed. We're not going to wait for anything to establish before we move them out here. The soil has a natural seed bank that, when given the right conditions of seed to soil contact, water, and the right amount of light, it'll start to grow. Right here behind me is a great example. There was no grass growing here whatsoever before we started clearing. I'm standing right here is in the garden, and right here was the edge of what we prepared for the garden. We put down cardboard and wood chips to keep anything from growing here. This area right here was outside of the garden, and it got a good bit of water from runoff. It got light from when we cut down the trees, and we walked through this area a good bit, so we kind of stirred up that soil, stamped it down, and created that seed to soil contact. And there's some really nice grass growing in here, and we didn't do anything. This has been growing for about a year, and yeah, there's some less desirable weeds and stuff mixed in, but there's good grass in there. So as for getting the rest of this growing, we took care of the light by getting all these trees out of here, and the cattle do a great job of creating that seed to soil contact and also helping with the watering part. Their hooves make a nice divot that will compress and push that seed against the soil, make that seed to soil contact, and it also creates a little divot that will collect rainwater, and that helps to stimulate that seed that's in the soil to grow. And we're not just relying on the native seed bank either. We're giving them hay as well, and that hay, we get local unsprayed hay, contains local native seed in there, and as they're eating it and spreading it around, they're spreading that seed around too, which is helping to build up that seed bank even more. Here, let me show you. You saw in a video a few weeks ago that we got these free hay bales. I carried them right through this area where I'm standing, stored them back there, and since they were all falling apart, I dropped little bits of hay as we went. Here's a great example of a bigger pile that I dropped. And look at all that growth that's coming out of that. When the cattle get to stomping on this and really packing that seed down, it's going to grow even better with that. You can see just by looking at these bales how much is already growing out of these. And yeah, this stuff right here that's growing on the top, they're going to eat that. But there's plenty more seed mixed inside these bales that hasn't started to sprout because it hasn't gotten the sunlight and the water. This alone could seed the pasture. This is my first time doing this. I've never done it before, so I don't have proof myself that I've done it, but I've seen other people do it. So I'm excited to see how it works, and we definitely will provide updates later on in the year and show how well it's working. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope to see you back here on our next one.